So just to pronounce your last name, Geyrhalter?
Yeah, that's good, actually.
Okay, cool. All right. Hey guys, this is Jacob Cass, and I have with you here today Fabian Geyrhalter.
You did it so perfectly.
I did. I practiced so good the first time. Fabian Geyrhalter. My apologies. I really messed that up twice, but yeah, super excited because he is a brand strategist and creative director of FINIEN, which is his firm, and he's also a podcaster. He's an author of two books on how to grow your brand. And I'm really excited to talk to him about his course as well today, which is focused on brand strategy and his process as well. So I'll give it to you. Do you want to give you a little intro, give everyone an intro, apart from what I just said, about, I guess, your idea on brand strategy and everything else?
Yeah, I mean, that's an open-ended intro.
Yeah.
No, I mean what you said, it's good. I run a brand consultancy in Los Angeles. We're two people, and we're never gonna scale up. I ran a design agency before. I didn't like it. After a good 12 years, I just had enough, and I wanted to do consulting and work deeper with brands, but also quicker. So I'm one of these strange consultants that actually, not like an agency, I actually want to come in and out rather quickly. Like I want to go in, solve a problem, become the best friend, and just when everything is great, I'm going to say goodbye, and they should be in good hands. So it's awesome. A very different, it's the anti-agency approach. There's no pitching more work. There's no like, hey, but I could also do this, right? That's and awesome. It's awesome. And instead of having, I don't know, like 15, 16 employees, I've got one employee, who does all of the creative work, and I mainly creative direct, and I do, mainly strategy work. So that should be enough to get us fired up.
Yeah, absolutely. So what is a typical process for you? Like you work with, just so you know, Fabian works with more mid-sized to larger agencies, which is admirable because a lot of our designers, we work with small businesses, especially sole traders. We work with small, mid-sized businesses, and Fabian works with, I guess, mid-sized to larger sizes. So
not only. So it's interesting. So I actually say, and it's kind of our new tagline. It's like, we work with startups of all sizes and ages. It's really, I mean, even when we work with Fortune 500s, it's usually the ones inside of the large organization that wants to steer things up, right? So it's usually incubators within, or the accelerators within. So I would say we work with startups, but that doesn't mean that they have a startup budget. Most of them, have Series A, B, C. They come as spin-offs from larger companies. So yeah, it's kind of like an in-between.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's what a lot of our listeners will want to hear about, is get into that next level and actually work with these sort of clients. And we'll get to that as well, and how you actually work with these startups that actually do have these fundings versus I don't want to say mom and pop shops, because it's not always like that. It's I guess if you talk about different tiers, it's probably the one below that where it is a startup without funding, for example. And how to get to that level of working with these bigger brands and how to position yourself. Your website does a great job of really honing in on that target audience, and I think a lot of people can learn from that, because like how you said, the working quicker and getting in and out is a great mantra, because you can really provide a deep level service with these big brands big. So yeah, we'll get to that.
But on the flip side, just to jump into that, and first of all, we're completely redesigning our site too. So it's funny, from the outside, it always looks so different, but from the inside, you're like, oh my God, we're totally mispositioned. What I did want to say about the fast in and out, it's also kind of a suicide mission that I really enjoy, because I constantly have to get new clients, right? So because we do this one process, and then afterwards, I'm not staying around with them. I'm not pitching them more work. I actually say, go. It's like now, find your own design people, do your thing now. So for anyone who wants to replicate anything like that, you just have to be okay not turning into an agency, and you have to be at peace to actually, peace of mind to be small and to be nimble and to constantly kind of have to reinvent yourself to keep getting clients. So that's the flip side,
So curious, you say, I think you mentioned at the start, you have some employees or you work with some other contractors, and you don't do design these days. So what is your process in terms of you get in and get out and do the strategy, and then you don't advise on design, or how do you bring in design? So your website
Actually,
has a lot of design on it as well.
yeah, totally. So actually we do design, but only to a certain extent. So our process, the first part is strategy, which I do in one day, which is totally strange, right? I do strategy in one day, and we can dive deeper into that later if you want to. And then we create the name of the company. So naming is one of our big offerings, which gets more difficult year after year, right? With domain names and trademarks, and it's an uphill battle, but somehow I really enjoy it. It's actually a lot of fun, and especially once you create the strategy to then craft the name, it's like as close as we get to giving birth as guys, right? It's like super exciting. It's like we actually see the whole thing, come through, and then my designer here, my creative lead in-house, like she actually, together with me, we create the identity. So we do create the identity. We create the colors and the fonts, and we even do a couple of applications of, hey, and this is how it will now roll out, right? Like this is how the strategy and the name and the logo, how everything comes together. But that's where we stop. So instead of saying we're going to do the website, we say, hey, we're going to show how the website could look. We don't do the UI, we don't do UX, we don't do wireframes, we don't do sitemaps, right? We don't have to deal with developers. And the same thing for anything. If they need a PowerPoint, if they're a fashion company, if they need hang tags, whatever they need, we basically say, look, whatever you need, just tell us, right? Like 5, 10 things. We don't even care if it's 5 or 10 things. Just tell us what you need, and we're going to make those things not only look good and consistent, but also be strategic, right? Go back to what we actually, had in mind when we first met. And that's our deliverable, where we say, look, here's the playbook, here's the visual playbook, here's the verbal playbook, right? Like this is how everything would come to life. This is how your brand should talk on Instagram, for instance, or if you're pitching to investors, is how it should talk. And at that point, we really have to hand it over to them, where they have to do the production, right? So a lot of clients don't like that, obviously, right? And some clients totally get it. They're like, this is awesome. You empower us to actually find these other people so we can start working with them on an ongoing basis. They're cheaper than you, right? Because they can be inexpensive freelance graphic designers that can do a great job. And I'm still involved after that. So they still have 10 hours of my time where I can get on phone calls briefing a designer or, briefing the web guys and stuff like that.
Okay. So how do you define strategy, and what is your process of working with the client through workshops and discovery calls, and just what's the insights or behind the scenes of actually giving them a deliverable at the end of the process?
Yeah. I mean, look, strategy can be defined in as many ways as branding itself can be defined, right? And and it's a personal, it's really a personal choice. And I feel for me, brand strategy is really to define the heart and soul, right? To really figure out what is the heart and soul of the company, and how can that be positioned to the correct audience where we have the biggest chance, right? In a way that is deeper and that really connects with the product or the service, right? So it's basically like all of these things have to align, right? The audience, the positioning in the marketplace, the heart and soul of the company, what's bigger, the big why, the true north, whatever we call it, right? Like in the end, all of these things have to align. A lot of it sounds horribly esoteric, and the more esoteric it actually sounds, the better of a brand it will be. So, the deeper people go, right? It's like you think of Whole Foods, and it's Whole Foods, whole people, whole planet, freaking esoteric. But then you actually look at them and you're like, yeah, well, that served them pretty well, right? So, and my process is one day. So I fly around and I meet with clients. Usually I prefer meeting in their space, with founder, co-founder, CMO if they already have someone, whoever the top tier is. If they say, well, we can't have the top people in the meeting, then I say I don't do it. So I need to meet with the CEO, with whoever the top people are, and they need to carve out an entire day of their work life, which is insanely expensive for them to do, right?
Yes.
So it's not even my fee, it's their fee, right? And so for me, the minute that they show up, they're committed. right? Because they're already wasting so much money at that point and time. But the cool thing is they all know that at the end of the day, they're done. Like when I leave, everyone is on the same page because we work through all of these, exercises throughout the day together. And we basically, there's all these top leaders in the room, and I guide them to make sure that everyone's opinion is heard, but that we also get to something that I feel is really, really strong, and everyone's nodding their head, right? So throughout the entire day, really being with these people for 8-9 hours, which is completely, drenching, right? Because you're on it for like 8-9 hours. It is so satisfying because you don't, like an agency, you have a kickoff meeting with some people. You don't even know if the right people are in there, right? And then 2 weeks later, you present something which is ridiculous because what are you going to present if you haven't even heard everything and you haven't even talked to, so it's this thing where it's exhausting for everyone involved. But after a day, it's done, and we never have to revisit it again, unless the brand after 3, 5, 10 years needs to strategically be realigned because of whatever other reasons. But that's pretty much it. And I work through a lot of standard exercises. Some are not so standard, some I created, but anything from positioning to core values to the mission to the differentiators, the brand identity associations, competitive advantages, all of that stuff. And it sounds like a lot, but you've got 8 hours. That's a lot of time, right? And usually I spend about 2 hours just on the positioning statement alone, which is crazy. And then I do the positioning again at the very end, which is cool. So in the very beginning, the first thing they do with me is positioning, which is like, the holy grail basically. And everyone's like, oh my God. And then at the very end again, I'm like, let's do that again. And everyone's already exhausted, but throughout the day, you use these words, right? And then all of these keywords come up, and certain really important brand DNA words come up. And then at the end of the day, you're like, oh my God, we can write it half as long and much more precise, and much more to the point and in a focused manner. And that's, I love that when that comes to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've taken your course, eResonate, and it's pretty much the exercise you talk about now.
Right.
You did that survey at the start and at the end of like the before and after, and I think it's really important to see the transformation for the client. So I think that's very clever to add in there.
Well, I appreciate it, and I figured, I can only do this course, it's one person doing the course, and I can only be in that many places, that often. And sometimes companies of China, out of China call me and they're like, hey, we want to do this with you, let's schedule a meeting. I'm like, well, are you going to fly me out? And they're like, oh, we thought that we can have it via Skype. And I'm like, I'm not going to do that. It's just not going to yield the results for you that you want. And so that's how that was the idea of why I did the online session, which is self-guided, me talking, and you've done it, right? But for everyone else, it's like me talking, as if I would talk to the client. I explain the exercise, I say how they would do it, and then they have an interactive PDF and they go through it. And the fun thing that I learned after I did the course, and I posted it online, is that more and more graphic designers that aspire to be brand strategists, or even brand strategists that are already doing it and they want to get inspired by other exercises or how other people do it, or a better framework, or how can I do all of this in one day? I kind of felt like, I'm going to put it out there for them too, because I don't care if people use the framework. It's like, it's everyone's going in the end, everyone's going to do it in a different way anyways. But I think it's a cool thing to kind of give to the community to say, hey, use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what really, when I started to learn more about brand strategy, which was probably a year or so ago, I was very fascinated by it. Like I always thought I was doing brand strategy, but it was more just thinking that would inform designs and not going on such a deep level. So I've really been investing in learning about brand strategy, talking to folks like yourself, and looking at processes and workshops and exercises to help facilitate that process. And I'm sharing my journey along the way of this process. So I'm hoping that your resources and insights will help people as well. And
cool,
you've done that already. So yeah.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Yeah. You've just brought out a new book as well, Bigger Than This. Yep. Did you want to have a chat about that?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so bigger than this, the subtitle is How to Turn Any Venture into a Brand. And it's not clickbait, it's actually, you can really turn any venture into an admired brand. Um, what I what I got fascinated with is, you and I and pretty much everyone who's in design is pretty fascinated with technology and innovation and progress. And so we love brands that are inspired by tech, that are tech driven. And then I realized that there are also brands in 2019 that have absolutely no tech or absolutely no innovation, and they actually sell the same product that everyone else has been selling forever. So there's not even a design innovation. And I'm like, okay, so if you have absolutely nothing to offer, what do you have to offer that people go crazy over, right? And so I started to look at those companies that had nothing to offer but brand strategy. They had a great story, or they shared belief, or they supported a cause, or there was something going on that even though the offering is the same old, they did something to elevate the brand into immediate consumer love. And that to me as a brand strategist, I mean, that's gold. I'm like, oh my God. It's like, if they can do it, I can use that trait, and I call it a trait. I can use that trait and apply it to any client, whoever feels like, yes, this resonates with me. We are a company driven by belief. Let's infuse that belief and make the belief our brand rather than the product, right? Like, how can that become the brand? So super simple thought, right? And I actually had it pretty precisely, 2 years ago during Halloween, when I saw, here in the US during Halloween, it's like mayhem, right? And all these kids, especially on my street, all these kids are just like dressed up, and the adults too, dressed up as something or someone that they want to be, right? But they're not. And it made me think about all those brands, how, remember Camel cigarettes? It was Joe Camel, and it was this cool character smoking. And it was like, it's kind of like branding how it used to be is so dead, right? And advertising how it used to be so dead. Like that idea that you just fake personas, trying to create, reactions, that are just all based on lies. It's kind of like these kids wanting to be something that they never, will be, right? And so I figured that those brands are really, they lost their costumes, and they're just super transparent, or they're just telling their story, and Generation C and millennials absolutely love it. And so I wrote this book with those 8 traits about, like, these are traits that I saw companies use. And it was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed it.
Amazing. And yeah, that comes with your course as well. So I was really stoked to see that in there. I definitely need to spend some more time going deeper into that book as well. So I also jumped over a question. You talked about getting clients, or having clients call you from China or wherever else. And I think it would be really useful for listeners to understand how you get clients and how you position yourself and selling through strategy when there are no real tangible deliverables in theory in terms of design and whatnot. So kind of open-ended question there, but
no, it's really 2 questions. I mean, how I get clients, boy, I'm just, as of recently, trying to be much better about asking every single person, like, how did you find me? Because people are so random about it. They're like, oh, we found you online. I'm like, thank you.
I know. I found you on Google.
Like, that means nothing to me. And they're like, well, and then we went to this one side and then there, and I don't know. And do you know? No, either way, let's talk about the brand. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about the brand, right? So it's pretty difficult, but of course, the more I put myself out there, so I do a lot of that thought leadership stuff, right, as they call it. And so writing 2 books, that gets your clients, right? Because people read your books, they feel like they understand your voice, they like what you have to say. It immediately makes you credible, right? And so that helps tremendously. I write a lot. I write for Forbes, for Inc., for a couple of those. I do way too little of that. But it's really word of mouth as it relates to who I am and what I do, right? And so the cool thing is, when people come to me because they already know about me, they have a pretty good idea that we're not going to be the design agency. Right. So they already kind of know that, because they're interested in, and they're kind of like pre-educated about brand strategy enough, right? That they actually seek me out. But that's maybe half of them, or maybe even, you know, like 1/3 of them. The other 2/3, you know, they're referrals from past, you know, clients that I went through the process with. They're referrals from PR agents that I work with. They're referrals from whoever else, right? You know, that basically knows that. A lot comes from speaking too. Usually when I speak at larger engagements, so a couple hundred people, there's always a couple of clients coming out of that. And again, you don't have to do the dog and pony show. You don't have to do, you know, they're just like, I want to work with you. And you just basically have to enable them to work with you, which is totally different when you pitch, right? When you're one of 10 agencies and you're doing a pitch. I don't do pitches anymore. I literally don't. If someone asks me for a proposal, I say we don't do proposals. I have a one pager that says it's like a Chinese menu, but it's like only 3 items. Like, this is what we do. This is how much it costs. I don't care if you're Warner Brothers or Honeywell, or if you're a bootstrap startup. This is what we do. This is how much it costs. Call me if you're interested, right? So there's this kind of, and I can do it because we're only 2 people, right? So I don't care, you know, if I have 5 clients next month or 2 clients next month. It's still going to be a good month. It's going to be, you know, it would be an amazing month if it's 5 clients, but it's still a great month if it's 2 clients. And if there's 0 clients, we have so much other stuff we can be doing, right? Like designing my next book and starting like stuff like that. So there's not that much pressure, you know, to actually get clients. And so when they to the second part of your question, and to finish my monologue, when they, you know, when they say, hey, we need a rebrand, and I need to tell them what I do and what I don't do, it's, you know, it's maybe 60% of them drop off after that, you know, and out of the 60%, most probably 40% drop off because of pricing. And most probably the other 20 drop off because we're not full service, and that freaks them out, right? But I don't want them, right? Because it doesn't make sense for me. So it's okay. I don't feel like I'm losing clients. I just say like, well, they were not qualified. You know, it's not a qualified lead. And the other 40%, and I'm just shooting with numbers because I don't know if it's 40%, it might be 20%, right? But like that smaller number, whatever that is, they then really like, they just want to be led. Like, I'm the guide, right? I'm like, here's how we do it. Here's why we do it like this. We're not an agency, and here's why we're not an agency, and here's why this is going to be awesome. And it costs that much because really it's nothing based on value and blah, blah, blah. And in the end, they're like, oh my God, you know, I talk with so many agencies, and, you know, this is exactly what I want, right? And when I have those people, it is the easiest way to work with them, because they really appreciate you having a process and you guiding them through and you knowing what you're doing. And they're never going to second guess that, right? I mean, unless you screw up and you're bad at what you do, but you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I love that. It's I love that you found out what works for you, and, you know, simplifying the process and just having one set fee more or less for everything. And whether or not that's right for everyone is another thing, and they have to figure that out as well. But it definitely sounds like it works for you, and being nimble and just having a one set track really. And that it makes it work.
However you can make life easier and more fulfilling, I think that's the holy grail, you know, for everyone, sooner or later, you know. And I don't even know if this would have been great for me in my 20s or my 30s. You know, I don't even know, right? Because in the 20s, I loved to do everything, you know, and I wanted to be part of everything. And I would have also not been able to just let go, right? I mean, I talk to designers now who turn into brand strategists, and they're like, oh, and creative directors, and they're like, oh my God, I have to tell people how to design a logo. Like, it freaks them out, right? Yeah. And for me, that's the most liberating thing, you know. It's like, hey, you do you, here's the strategy, go after it, you know, just make sure you don't do A, B, and C, and just make sure you do a little bit of DEF, and that's it, right? Yeah, exactly. It's extremely liberating.
Yeah, well, I'm not in that stage yet. I still love my design, so I think I'm a bit of a hybrid at this stage. But I definitely want to provide like a deeper level of service. And what's really interesting, what made me really interested in brand strategy is giving more purpose to a brand and really elevating the brand to make more impact in the world and really using business for good. So that's really where my heart's at and why I'm getting into it, and to give that deeper service.
Yeah, that's interesting. I just read today that the new CEO of Unilever, and Unilever is like one of the biggest PCG, you know, companies out there. everything from hairspray to margarine, butter, like everything, right? And the CEO of Unilever said that if one of our any one of our brands that doesn't have purpose, we're just going to kick out of our portfolio. That's amazing, right?
Yeah,
We've got
it is, yeah.
hundreds of consumer brands, right? He's a new CEO. He came in, a couple of months ago, half a year ago. So, and I just read that interview. It was from August, and he said that if one of our brands doesn't have purpose, it doesn't belong here anymore. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it'd be
So that should
interesting
give
to
you
see
an
how
idea.
that evolves. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I think it should. I think it's a wake-up call for designers to really truly get to know their clients and provide that deeper service. And I've said it before, in terms of pivoting as a designer, I think we're going to get left behind in terms of providing design as a service because of all the new tools and resources coming out available on the online, such as Canva, which makes design more accessible for certain industries, and as well as services like 99 Designs and Fiverr and all of that, which would just make it even more accessible. So providing a deeper level of service in terms of brand strategy, it just makes sense.
Well, and that was part of why I made my pivot 5 years ago, because I saw that too. I mean, look, back then at the height of my design agency, we were 18 people. And that's a lot of mouths to fill, right? And everyone wants a salary increase, and everyone wants a new position. And, and then in the end, you do projects for a couple $1,000s here and there because you just like the more the merrier, right? You got to make sure. And it's just not sustainable. And I started seeing, and sometimes I even advise clients when look at some of the 99 Design logos, right? 99% of them are complete crap. 1% is gold, right? And if you find that 1%, and if you have that ability, that you have that creative knowledge as a client, if you're in the creative industry, for instance, right? You can absolutely hire someone in Eastern Europe or someone via 99 Designs, and you are going to get the exact same quality as if they would hire someone like you and me. And I say that 100% certain. They might not get the strategy, right, that you and I would provide and all of that. And so that is a real problem to the design industry. And that's why strategy is so important, where if you create a logo, if you create an identity, if you create an entire visual system based on strategy and not just taste, then everything changes, right? And that's why it's so crucial to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well said. So, yeah, I'm not sure if you had any other questions. I really, they were the main questions I was going through. I think 30 minutes is a good amount of time for our listeners, but if you had anything else to add, we can just jump in.
I have no questions for myself. We already caught up a little bit in the beginning. No, I think the biggest lesson of the last half an hour is really try to lead with strategy, but don't try to call yourself a strategist until you actually feel confident that you are one. I think that's really important, right? It took me a long time until I actually put these words out there, and I'm like, I think I am that now, right? Yeah. And the way that I work, like you said, doesn't work for a lot of people, but I think it is important that you find for your own company as a designer, for your design company, that you, not you, but you as a listener, right? Find your true north, right? Find like what really makes your heart beat. Find like the type of clients that you really love to work with, that also pay on time, that actually appreciate your work, that actually have a need for your thinking and for your designs. And then I can't say it often enough, specialize, focus, right? Create clarity. Right? If you're like, hey, I'm a small design shop doing everything for everyone, especially for B2B and B2C, and, and we're great at websites. It's like, dude, no, you're most probably not. You're most probably not great at all the things that you offer, when you come across like that, as a small design shop with 1 or 2 people. So, it's just about getting real and finding a focus and just saying, you know what, I'm going to get really, really good at that. And I'm only going to talk to that audience. And on my blog, I'm not going to talk about, design anymore and other designers, but I'm going to talk about that client and those kind of clients and what they need to do, So yeah, that's all I would tell designers that want to kind of like take that leap.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm kind of, in between at the moment in terms of what title I use. Yes, they're all titles, and there's kind of like as I said, in between designer and strategist at the moment. And I think it's kind of a bit of fake it till you make it, because you need to learn the process of strategy, and you also need to promote that you're doing strategy. So, and you can't really put like junior brand strategist on your title. It just doesn't have the same ring to it. So it's kind of like
it's tough, but I mean, I always think in the beginning, just do it for really inexpensive or free, and just kind of throw it in there, and it's part of your process, and you do a half day workshop or whatever you do, right? But you do it in a way where then afterwards, after that day or that half day, you feel like you provided so much freaking exciting, input to the company, where you felt like you just really moved them up. And if you think about how much money that would make them, or how it would change the culture, how it would change the product, if it really feels like, you know what, that was extremely strategic. They bought into it. They loved it. They loved the way that I talked to them about it. They see value in it. Then afterwards, tell them, hey, if I would, what we've just done today, if I would package it up, and if I would sell that idea of brand strategy, because that's what they call it, if I would package that up, how much would it be worth to you if we would do this again? Have them tell you. Because my first brand workshop was $3,500. And I was scared. I'm like, oh my God, that's so much money, right? And then it was 5,000, and it was 75, and it just kept going up. But it only went up because clients told me. So there's a one client was like, you are way too cheap, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, you just paid me $5,000 for a couple of hours of work, and you say I'm way too cheap. And then and then I went up to 8,000, right? And then I had lunch with another client. He's like, Fabian, 8,000, it's so weird. Like everything else you have is 10,000 or 20,000. Why is that 8,000? Just make it 10. And I'm like, okay. You know what I mean? And so now everything I do is just 10, 10, 20. That's it. 10, 10, 20. That's all I do, right? And I don't have to think about it twice. But it's cool to actually ask your clients about the value that you provide them, which designers never do, because we're somehow strangely introverts. And brand strategy in a way is very extroverted, because you really have to get stuff
engaged. You're really getting information out of people and distilling that information. So you do have to be out there to get that.
Right. All right. We added on to this. Look.
Now we're at 35 minutes or 34 minutes. But thank you so much, mate. It was a pleasure to talking to you.
So. Absolutely. Pleasure was mine.
All right. Thanks,
Cheers.